I am Vinnie Todderton, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. That's why I'm here. I'm going to help you get them back. And, you might be soft and succulent when we start this process, but hang in there. You'll be lean and mean before you know it. It's the Friday show, so you know that means we bring in someone that has way more knowledge than me. We've learned that it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot to beat my amount of knowledge. But this guy is super smart. He's been on the show a few times. You will recognize him if you're watching the video. This video is going to be up on the YouTube, as the kids say. You're going to recognize him from his first movie way back when. I want to say it came out in 2009 or 10. It was called Fathead, the movie. And that kicked off all kinds of Fathead stuff. And I'm pretty sure he's sick and tired of talking about it, especially if it came out back then.
Yeah.
2021 now. But I got other questions for this guy. And so let's just bring him on and we'll just start right in. Tom Naughton, how you doing, Pumpkin?
I'm good, Pumpkin. I'm good. How are you?
Tom, I feel like you and I, even though we've never met in person, I feel like we have a friendship at this point.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Yeah. Yeah, people say to me all the time, they'll go, "Hey, you know this Tom Naughton? Are you going to have him on your podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's been on as much as Gary Taubes, or maybe even more." How many times have you been on, Tom?
I think it's been twice. If it's been 3 times, I forgot one of them.
So this would be the third or fourth time.
Third or fourth now.
Yeah, you're up there in Gary Taubes, Nina Teicholz's category. Well, I have Nina on as often as possible because let's just face it, she's cute.
Yeah.
And you want to look at her. So I just keep bringing her back on.
So that's why you had me on?
Yeah, because you're cute.
Well, okay. I'll take it.
It's the receding hairline mixed with the goatee that just drives.
This is a good look. It's a good look for me.
So, Tom, the movie came out. You became known for it. You were a comedian at the time, right?
Yeah, well, I actually made it partly because I had been a comedian. I'd been a road comedian. You know, you're traveling all the time. My daughters came along, and it was really when my older daughter turned 2. She started to really miss Daddy when Daddy was gone. And I called home from a cruise ship one time, and she was trying to be brave, and she started then weeping. "I miss you so much. When are you coming home?" And at that point, I just kind of evaluated and thought, I need to do something where I'm not gone. So that making Fathead was kind of partly a response to that. So yeah. So really, I mean, that kind of ended my stand-up career, but it got me making Fathead. So it was all for the good.
You're not, if I remember right from reading somewhere at some point, you were a journalist before comedian. You're one of those guys with a lot of hats. So you did something before that, right?
Yeah, before that, well, my first job out of college, I was a writer and editor for a small magazine, very small magazine called Family Safety and Health, which was kind of my first introduction into the health field. But of course, this was the 80s. And at the time, guess what? I was one of the guys writing articles telling you to go on a low-fat diet and eat your grains, So I hope nobody still has access to those articles because I would be ashamed of them. But I left that. I did some freelance writing. I had acted in commercials and industrial films, and I was trying to get bands together because I'm a musician. And about the 4th time a band broke up because of somebody else's personal problems, I just said, I need to do something where it's totally on my own and I'm not dependent on other people. So I decided I would give stand-up a try. And I went to open mics and I was horrible. And like all beginners are, but I just kept at it until I got to the point where I got good and got hired. And, it was a career for a while. It was great.
Stand-up is ridiculously hard. When I first moved to LA from New Orleans, I had a radio talk show in New Orleans. And I realized that I wouldn't get back on the radio in LA right away, but I wanted to stay lubed up. I wanted to stay warmed up. And someone had suggested to me, "Hey, you could go to open mics around LA." And so I did. Right. And one day I meandered into on Melrose Street. I meandered into come on, help me out, Tom.
Melrose would be the Improv or the Comedy Store. Yeah.
I went to the Improv and I went up I think Tuesday night was open mic at the Improv. because the store was Wednesday night, or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe the store was, which one was which?
I don't remember. It's been so long. Yeah.
So this is early on. And I went up one night and just, they give you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just went up and complained for 5 minutes about everything that was wrong with LA and traffic. I didn't have 5 minutes, but it came to a nice crescendo and then an ending, and the light came on. I said, thank you guys. I'm out of here. Got some laughs, got some applause. I'm walking off the stage. I'm leaving the building, and Mark Lanau follows me out, one of the owners of the Improv. And he says, how long have you been doing this? And I looked at my watch and I said, about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And he goes, you should come. I have a class. And I went, oh, he's selling the class. Okay. And I went, okay, I'll come to your dumb class, because I was going to do this for a while. But if I remember right, the class was either free or very, very inexpensive. And this is a guy that didn't need the money. I think if there was any money, it was there just to charge, just so that you can have some skin in the game type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So I went to the class, and he taught us how to write a joke and all this kind of stuff. And I went up again the next Tuesday night, and now had a more formulated way to yell at the audience. And the audience responded by laughing, and I left after 5 minutes. And that went on 2 or 3 times. And then Mark came up to me and he goes, you really have a point of view. And this is speak, Tom, that I don't understand. Right? It's like a point of, what do you mean point of view? I don't know actor speak. But when you're on the radio every day, just yelling into a mic, you know how to stand up and just yell into a mic. And you can't really see the audience. You see the first couple of people in the first row. And he said, I want you to come back and we're going to have you host a Tuesday night. And I came back and I said, well, how does that work? He goes, you go up, you tell a couple of minutes of jokes, and then you bring someone up. We'll tell you who to bring up each and every time. We'll give you a little thing to read. And I did that. I brought up people like Jerry Seinfeld onto that stage. And then he came up to me one day and he goes, okay, we need to put you on the road. You need to what? He goes, we can't just have you playing this club. We need to put you on the road. You need to go work the road.
Right.
And of course I said, what does that pay? And what does that pay, Tom? $50 a show, right?
Not much.
I'm like, I don't think you understand. I have clients. I'm working. I train people during the day. I'm a trainer. He goes, oh, that's why you talk about fitness and fat. That's you actually do that. I went, yeah. He goes, well, do you have an acting coach? I went, no, I can't act. I'm not an actor. I do radio. I don't have a radio gig right now. I'm doing this. I'm trying to stay lubed up. And he tried very hard to get me to stay in comedy. I didn't see a career in it at all, because of what you guys go through, right? I mean, it's just a complete pig fuck the entire time you're doing it. Or am I wrong? Does it ever get easy?
No, believe me, it's tough at the beginning, and you're traveling. And like you said, you might drive 100 miles and do a show and get $50. And you're doing it at the beginning just to get the experience, because when he was talking about having a point of view, I mean, a big part of becoming a decent comedian is what they call finding your voice. I mean, if you go see Jerry Seinfeld, you know what you're going to get, right? He's not going to be suddenly doing Bill Burr's type material. Jerry Seinfeld's going to sound like Jerry Seinfeld. Bill Burr is going to sound like Bill Burr. And it actually takes a while to find your voice and find not only what the audience responds to, but what you feel comfortable and happy talking about. So it does take a while. And, it's a long road, but I mean, I did end up to the point where I was making a living at it. And especially when you finally get to where you're doing cruise ships and stuff, frankly, the pay is kind of phenomenal considering you're doing 2 shows a week.
Yeah.
So by the time I, ultimately decided to quit, I'm not going to complain about the pay. It was pretty good, but it takes a long time to get there. And by the time I walked away, I didn't mind doing it.
And it also, to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it felt too much like homework, because, getting 5 minutes together is one thing. Getting 10 minutes together is a whole different thing. I couldn't imagine putting together an hour.
That's the part that's tough, because there's a different rhythm. So there are people who have gone out and done perfectly well on the Tonight Show, where I think they got 5 or 6 minutes. And then people would go see their hour-long show and go, gee, I don't know, he wasn't that funny. It's a different rhythm to keep it going for an hour. And it kind of has to be like a novel. It kind of has to go up and then up a little more, and then up and down a little more. You know, there's a rhythm to it. And that takes a long time to develop, you know. And I did hour-long shows. I much preferred the gigs where I did half-hour-long shows because that rhythm was tighter. But yeah, it's like writing a novel to come up with a good hour-long act. It really is.
It really, a truer statement's never been made. I'm also jealous of you, Tom, because I go out and do talks. Well, for the past year, I haven't done any talks. No one's hired me because no one's doing conventions or anything else. But I go up and do talks. And basically, when someone hires me, I'll go, okay, what do you want?
Right.
They'll say, what do you mean? What do I want? It's like, do you want this is how you tell your whole organization to lose weight talk? Or do you want the cancer survivor talk? Or do you want this is how I grew up on the bayou and became successful talk? I have 3 talks.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I can mix and match those talks too. And I'll say, do you want the 40 minutes, the 45, or the hour? You know, just tell me what you want. And I can go up and rattle it off. I just grab the mic and go. I could not do what you do. I'm mesmerized when I watch you on stage because you have the PowerPoint, you have cartoons, it's a floor show when you're doing a thing, and it's working flawlessly. Do you ever worry that the machine isn't going to work, or how does that work for you? Because I look at you and I get nervous watching, and I'm going, this son of a bitch, he's flawless. Look at him. He's got this.
Thank
and
you.
then I remember, oh, wait, he's a comedian. He knows how to cover. Tell me about that, Tom.
Thank you. I don't know if I'd say flawless because, you know, you ask any performer who watches his or her own act and they'll tell you that they immediately spot the flaws. That's kind of how we all are. But I've done, so I didn't use PowerPoint or anything when I was doing stand-up. That's been more speeches I've given in the last some years. And of course, when people ask me to do a speech, they ask me to do a speech fully knowing I'm going to put humor into it. That's why they wanted me. I've had things where a PowerPoint slide didn't come up, or I was supposed to, I was going to play a slide that was supposed to have a little video in it and the video didn't play. I mean, you just roll with it. It's just like being a comedian. Sometimes something happens in the room you didn't anticipate and you roll with it. And honestly, you're old enough to remember Johnny Carson, which a lot of you youngsters out there don't, but you remember he'd occasionally tell a joke and it just bombed. He would get
he would do his thing.
He would get a bigger laugh with the fact that it didn't work. He knew how to do that. And that's kind of what you have to do. If something doesn't work, don't panic. Don't like, oh my God, the video's not playing. You just kind of act like, well, isn't this fun? And you make some joke about it and you move on.
Yeah. I think, I'm sorry. I was in Houston or somewhere doing one of these keto talks. I can't remember where it was, but they had the regular, just the regular crowd. We all shuffle in and we do our talks, right, over 2 days, and it was at a hospital or an auditorium. And I was in the back in the AV booth with I don't know if it was Ivor Cummins or Dave Feldman. It was one of those two. It was Feldman. And he realized that for some reason, his computer wasn't jiving with their equipment and they wouldn't be able to and the guy, he just went flush, because if it didn't work, this meant that he had to walk on stage and just cold hard deliver this.
Right. With no slides.
Yeah. With nothing. And I called Serena on the phone. I said, honey, she goes, everything okay? I said, yeah. Dave Feldman's getting ready to go up. And he looks like someone just showed him a dead relative. And she goes, why? I said, his presentation isn't working. And, he's trying to get him to shuffle him later on in the day, and he's trying to figure it out. And she goes, why are you calling me? I said, because I'm always telling you that's why I'll never do it. I can't do it. I just can't.
Well, I mean, the good thing was during my stand-up days, I was, strictly monologue. I didn't have slides. I didn't have props or anything. So unless my voice quit working, which it did once, now that I think about it, I knew I was going to be okay. Or the microphone quit working, which happened more than a couple of times. But again, you know what? You just got to roll with it.
Yeah, you can turn that into something. We're going to do
Yeah.
a quick spot here, and then when we come out of it, I want to get into fathead kids a little bit. And I was reading, not reading, I was watching one of your slide presentations that really had me intrigued. Well, the reason I was even watching it was because you sent it to me about the difference in the wisdom of crowds versus the wisdom of the anointed. And do you mind talking about that?
No, I don't mind talking about it all. Wisdom of crowds
Wait,
versus
yeah,
yeah.
hang on. I need to do a quick spot and we'll get into it.
Sure.
Folks, Belcampo, Belcampo. That's just me showing off, letting you guys know I can read. Belcampo.com. You want to taste some meat, some extraordinary meat? You want to have meat at a great price? You want the best meat in this country or any country that's touching this country? Belcampo. Just go there, belcampo.com. They deliver right to your door. Don't fall asleep on their New York strip. I've been enjoying the crap out of those probably twice a week. I shouldn't be eating that much great meat because if I ever run out of Belcampo, then I won't know what to do. It's that good. The meatballs are amazing. I even get their bone broth. I'm getting lazy. I'm not making it as much. I just get it from Belcampo. Put in promo code Vinnie, Vinnie, 20% off. Promo code Vinnie, no wimpy Y, Vinnie gets you 20% off at Belcampo. Check out everything. Just go to belcampo.com. If you spend over $100 after the 20% discount, so if you do the math, you got to spend over $120, you will get free shipping. That means a lot when you're buying something heavy like meat. Belcampo.com, promo code Vinnie, let them know we sent you. Anna Vocino cannot get enough of this place. And every day when I do the consults, folks are telling me, man, I thought you were just shilling for this company. It's really that good. It's like, yeah, look, I don't lie. I have no reason to lie. I had a different meat vendor at one time. I switched. We have a better meat vendor. That's what they should call themselves. We're the better meat vendor. Belcampo.com. Go check them out. Promo code Vinnie, 20% off on your first time use. Over $100, free shipping every time. We are talking to Tom Naughton. He did the great film Fatheads and Fathead Kids. Tom, where are we with the Fathead Kids? And you and I agree, the kids don't even look like kids used to look.
No, they don't. Well, Fathead Kids, I think we came out with the book maybe 3 years ago. I don't know, time flies, and the older I get, the faster it flies. Yeah. I think it was 3 years ago, and then I guess it was a couple years ago. And we knew as soon as, while we were producing the book, that I was going to turn around immediately and turn it into an animated film. So then it was a couple years ago, we released Fathead Kids animated film. It's just a fun way of explaining to kids how your body works, how foods affect your health. We use this whole analogy of your body's kind of like a biological starship, and we have the crew, Marty Metabolism, the chief engineer who's running everything, and et cetera, to just show the fact that your body's kind of like a starship. There are systems in there that are programmed. The programs are triggered by messages, and the messages come from food. So what you eat affects your health ultimately. And it's kind of a little homage to Star Trek and Star Wars. And I've actually had a lot of adults say, well, now that you explained it to kids, I finally understand this stuff. So it was just something fun we wanted to do to try to get kids to understand this, because I had a lot of people after Fathead came out say, I really want to look for a way to explain this to my kids. So that was kind of it.
Yeah, we do a special show every week on Sunday called Vinnie Sunday School, where I try to tame it down a bit and talk to kids. And we get more adults listening to that show. And look, as I tell the experts when they come on Friday, I'll say, listen, explain it to me as if I'm in second grade. Just take it down a notch. And when they do that, I can understand it. The audience can understand it, because, these scientists and these doctors can just go right over your head.
Right.
I think that happens a lot when we go visit a doctor. Doctor will start saying, you have this, that, and the other thing. And we're trying to remember what they're saying so we can go home and Google it. I mean, think of 20 years ago, there was no Google.
Yeah.
All we had was Johnny Carson back then.
Right.
We didn't even have him 20. It's hard to,
No,
he's been gone longer than that. He's like 30
you're
something.
dating yourself now. I
Yeah.
think it was 97 or so he retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, it is for those of us who grew up with him.
Tom, take me through. I love this thing you do with the wisdom of crowds versus the wisdom of the anointed, if you don't mind, because you do that so well and it makes so much sense.
Sure. And it's the wisdom of crowds and the vision of the anointed, because I'm going by the book title, The Vision of the Anointed. So those were books that I had read, and neither of them, by the way, is about diet and health policy. They're just, each book explains how we make decisions or how decisions are made for us. And the wisdom of crowds is what you and I would understand as, well, an example of it would be the dietary wisdom that came down from the tribe, from our grandmothers, et cetera, et cetera. It's the type of knowledge that is not planned. No one is in charge of it. It's the knowledge that develops over time. It's knowledge that is based on experience by trying things or eating things and seeing what the results are. It's the type of wisdom that kind of bubbles up from the crowd. And the point of the book is that little groups of experts, no matter how educated they are, no matter what their degree is in, little groups of experts do not have as much combined knowledge as 1,000 people you pick at random. So very often the knowledge that bubbles up from the crowd, especially because it's based on experience and not just academic theory, the knowledge that bubbles up from the crowd often gives us the best answers. So that was one way of looking at how we acquire knowledge. How did we used to know what foods were good for us? We asked grandma, or the elders of the tribe would tell us, we did not rely on experts to tell us what we should be eating. The Vision of the Anointed is actually a book written by an economist and philosopher. David Mamet called him our greatest living philosopher, Thomas Sowell. And he explains how the Vision of the Anointed is, he doesn't call it the opposite of the wisdom of crowds, but it is. The Vision of the Anointed is where little groups of experts decide that their academic expertise matters more than the knowledge that bubbles up from the crowd. It is not based on experience, it's based on academic theory. It usually does not come about over time. They tend to fall in love with new ideas, new theories, new research. And often their visions of, the reason it's called the Vision of the Anointed is they will often come up with a vision for a grand plan, a way to solve some problem. And because they tend to come from the intellectual class, they're often way too impressed with their own intelligence and their own expertise to the point where they will ignore evidence that they're wrong. And they will, if they're given the opportunity, impose the grand plan on other people for their own good, of course. So in the speech that I gave that you saw, I was relating it to dietary policy because that's exactly what happened with our dietary policies. We had little groups of experts decide, never mind the dietary wisdom that's come down through the ages. We have come up with a better idea that you should be eating low fat, that you should be eating all these healthy whole grains, et cetera, et cetera. They ignored the evidence that they were wrong. They came up with the grand plan, which was the US dietary policy, and then they imposed it where they could on other people through schools, through all government agencies, through prisons, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing that Sowell points out in the book that I think absolutely applies to dietary policy and is currently applying to COVID policy is once they come up with a grand plan, even if it fails, which it often does, in fact, the grand plan often makes things worse, they will never, ever be convinced that they're wrong. If the grand plan fails, they decide it can only be for a handful of reasons. Number one, our plan was great, but people didn't do it right because they're stupid. How many times have we heard that the food pyramid's great, it's just it was too complicated for people to understand, they didn't do it right, which is nonsense. The second reason is that their plan was great, but it was undermined by people who were evil. Or their third, and this is my favorite, and certainly what we're seeing with COVID policy, no, the plan was good, but it didn't go far enough, which means we need to do the same thing again, only bigger. So that speech was basically contrasting those two different ways of looking at the world. And in the case of that speech, explaining how it explains our dietary policies. But I mean, to me now, you could take everything I said in that speech and apply it to COVID policy, and it's the same thing, because the anointed always operate the same way and they always follow the same pattern.
You know, it's interesting. The other night, 2 nights ago on Twitter, and I think your older brother, it's your older brother. I see him there
Right.
sometimes
Yeah.
too. Love that.
Well, they banned him, but
Oh, is he not there anymore?
he's not there anymore. They kicked him off Twitter.
Why did he get kicked off?
Because he posted a public domain photo collage of Joe Biden sniffing kids' hair. Public domain photo.
And he got kicked off for that.
And he committed the thought crime of posting it. And Twitter said, "You violated our community policies. Your account has been suspended."
So wait, so these were just public domain. Anyone could have seen these same photos anyway.
Yes. Yes.
And by the way, Tom, I don't do politics on this show, and I have nothing against Biden. I have nothing against Trump. I don't do politics, but that doesn't make any sense.
No, and I know you don't do politics, and I won't get into it, other than to say that Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, are very definitely doing politics, and they are most definitely suspending or closing accounts for reasons that they only apply to people of one political persuasion. Let's just put it that way.
Well, you know, I've never openly said what my political persuasion is, but I also get crap from Facebook. We have a group, Vinnie Tortorich's No Sugars, No Grains, and it's got close to 30,000 people in it. And these people are helping each other lose weight all the time. They've been getting on me because they said there's hate speech in your group, and they have to send me the hate speech and show me what people are saying, which is considered hate speech. One of them, and they keep telling me over and over, if they keep doing this, the group is done. Bacon fat is hate speech, according to Facebook. So, and there is nothing political about my page. People don't know if I'm on the right, the left, purple. No one knows what I am. People surmise, they'll go, well, wait a minute. He shoots skeet, so he has a gun. That would make him a right winger. And then other people, wait a minute. His best friend and business partner is gay, so that would make him a left winger. Yeah, no one can really figure out what I am, but he drives an F-150. That's got to be more to the right, right? I mean, he doesn't have a Prius, and I sold my F-150. Now everyone's confused. You know, no one knows what I am based on my car or the sports that I do or my business partner / best friend. And I like to keep it that way, you know, that they have no idea. Even my co-host of all these years, Anna Vocino, she has no idea. We've never talked politics, and we became good friends off the air. We just, Anna, I just don't talk about it. Yet Facebook is trying to get rid of me.
Right.
Twitter shadow bans my account. We know that. They won't give me a blue check. We've tried every which way to get me a blue check. Not that I care to have a blue check. We just want to know why they won't give it. And the excuse one day was, we're just not giving out blue checks this month. And on the same day, Vin Scully, we have very similar names, Vincent, got a blue check.
Okay.
So apparently, if you're over 90 years old, they were giving out blue checks that day. So it makes no sense. Wikipedia, you know, people have heard me talk about this over and over. One day, my Wikipedia just vanished.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had my attorney call, and they said, we could not verify one thing about this guy. And I said, you can't even verify that Serena Scott Thomas is my wife? And they said, no, we can't. And I said, well, if you go to her Wikipedia page, it'll say that I'm her husband. And they said, no, it doesn't. They removed it from there too.
Yeah.
That's how deep they will go. If they don't want you to play, you don't get to play.
Now, I tell you what, Wikipedia had they had a rogue editor, and I don't know if it was just one, but they certainly had a rogue editor who was going after anyone who promoted eating meat or promoted a low carb diet. All kinds of pages were taken down. Malcolm Kendrick's page was taken down. Jimmy Moore's page was taken down. Someone notified me that the fathead entry, which I didn't enter, frankly, I don't give a rat's ass about Wikipedia, but that the fathead page had been targeted for deletion. And I finally, and again, I don't care if I'm on Wikipedia or not, but it was interesting how anyone promoting the idea of a low carb diet, a no grain diet, a meat heavy diet was being deleted, obviously by someone, who's a vegetarian or a stop eating meat, save the planet type. So I started pinging the founder of Wikipedia on Twitter and just saying, you've got a rogue editor. Look at these that have been deleted and blah, blah, blah. And at first he came back saying, oh, it appears to be legit, blah, blah, blah. It's within our policy. And I just kept reminding him, pinging him, why is this page being deleted? Why is that page being deleted? My page is about to be deleted, I'm told, the fathead page. Not that I care, but I want to know why. So finally, he looked into it. And based only on his intervention, the fathead page is still on Wikipedia because he told them not to take it down. But it doesn't surprise me at all that you'd be targeted on Wikipedia. You say eating meat is good for you. You must be a bad person.
My Wikipedia, you mentioned Malcolm Kendrick. Our Wikipedias were taken down because I was interviewing him that day. They were taken down on the same day.
Right.
Odd. And we also, both Malcolm and I, were privileged enough to be put on something called Rational Wiki on the same day, where they call us kooks and charlatans and all this other stuff. And so I went to my same attorney who, he's on speed dial at this point. And I said, Scott, not only do you have to call Wikipedia, you need to get me off of Rational Wiki because the truth was on Wikipedia. They said that wasn't true. That was taken down. So using the logic of the internet, we should be able to get the lie down. No can do. That lie is still up today. You see, so if you're telling me that it's a level playing field, it's not.
Right.
And they should all be fucking ashamed of themselves. They should.
They should, but they won't be, and we can't shame them into it. Here's the reason. You and I come from the mindset that says, if it's true, I believe it. They come from the postmodernist mindset, which is exactly the opposite. That mindset is, if I believe it, it's true. And that is a whole school of thought that has unfortunately permeated our universities. They also have a completely different attitude about the meaning, the purpose of speech. You and I have the idea that if you and I disagree, we should both be able to have our say, and that ultimately the correct ideas will win. It's the wisdom of crowds thing again. The ideas that work, the truths become evident over time. The best ideas are going to win, and that is the reason we have free speech, so that we can have this big mix of ideas and we can let the good ones rise to the top. In the postmodernist world, words are weapons, and allowing you to speak, as far as they're concerned, is allowing you to fire your weapon. And because you're a bad person, they feel justified in taking away your weapon. To them, censoring people and stifling free speech, to them, they are disarming the bad guys. And that's their worldview, and you can't talk them out of it. I agree they should be ashamed, but in their sick worldview, they think they're the good guys and they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's a scary world. I want to continue down this path, but first I need to tell everyone about purevitaminclub.com. Folks, there is no discount code here because the discount is already there. I created this company after I had cancer, after my own fight with leukemia. I started looking at everything that went into my body, including the vitamins I was taking at the time. I started seeing things like titanium dioxide and magnesium stearate and all this other stuff, excipients and flow agents and psyllium, which is, things that don't belong in your vitamin. Silica was also in there. And so I started researching all of this stuff. And I started calling around and asking vitamin companies, why is it in there? And they would say, oh, it's in a manufacturing process. That's how, time is money. And we have to put it in there because we need to keep the machines moving really fast. Well, that's fine if time is money, but at the cost of your health and my health, I found out that titanium dioxide, even in nanoparticles, can cause colon cancer, not a cancer you want. No cancer is a cancer you want. Magnesium stearate will actually block the absorption of the very vitamin you're taking, along with every other nutrient that you're taking in. You don't want that in your body. That's why I created purevitaminclub.com. And I did what I called the Toyota Honda approach. Let me tell you what that means. When I was a kid, the richest guy in my neighborhood had a Mercedes, and he kept that car for 12 to 15 years. So what I learned from that was a Mercedes is a very good car, and it can last a very long time, and you only have to buy it once. And that's what rich people do. They get the best, and that would be a Mercedes, because that's what the guy in my neighborhood had, the rich guy. And then Toyota came along. They gave you something better than a Mercedes, but they didn't overcharge for it. That's why Toyota and Honda is what it is today. I made the Toyota and Honda of vitamins, purevitaminclub.com. You get the Mercedes quality with the Toyota price. Ooh, I should write copy. Tom, I could have written copy back in the day. Go check out purevitaminclub.com. There are deals to be had when you get there. If you bundle, if you get a subscription, and on and on and on, you can save a lot of money. It's very inexpensive to keep your health going in the right direction. purevitaminclub.com. We're talking to Tom Naughton, the guy who did Fatheads Kids, and books, the Fathead Kids book, along with many other things. Yeah, Tom, I was on just the other day. I was on Twitter. Well, I'm on Twitter every day. And my good friend Joel Kahn saw one of my tweets. And he used to go 2 or 3 rounds. We would kind of, jab 2 or 3 rounds. Yeah. And then he would go to ad hominem.
Right. Yeah.
He's not even doing that. He just goes right to ad hominem. He doesn't even try anymore. His first statement was, well, you don't even have a degree. You're not a scientist. Why would anyone listen to you?
Yeah.
And, I wrote about this in my book. I have a degree in exercise physiology and in nutrition, and I got a lot of years behind me successfully working with people in Hollywood, getting them to lose weight and keeping weight off and teaching them how to eat. That's why people should listen to me, because what you're telling them will make them fat, sick, and damn near dead.
Right.
Probably. I think that was another movie. What say you, Tom?
Well, the anointed are big on degrees. They are what Nassim Nicholas Taleb likes to refer to as the intellectual yet idiot type, where he says they feel qualified to tell the rest of us what to eat, what to do, how to live. And their only real skill is in passing exams written by people like them. I am in no way opposed to academic degrees, but there is no substitute for the knowledge that comes from experience. If I were overweight and I wanted someone to coach me into losing weight, I would much rather go to a guy who has coached what, Vinnie, hundreds, thousands of people into losing weight?
Yeah.
Okay, that's experience. Your knowledge is based on experience. I don't care if your degree is in basket weaving. I don't care if you don't have a degree. If you have successfully coached hundreds, if not thousands of people into successfully losing weight, you have the knowledge that really matters, which is the knowledge of experience. And I actually brought that up in the speech you said you saw online, Diet, Health, and the Wisdom of Crowds. I remember when I was in high school, our health teacher, as often happens in high schools, was also a coach, but he was the wrestling coach. What is a wrestling coach's job? Well, what is part of his job as a wrestling coach? It's to help these dudes get down to their competition weight,
right?
Which he did. He had the knowledge of experience. And I remember, because this is in the 70s, this is before the whole McGovern Commission came along. I specifically remember him telling us, if you guys want to lose weight, You need to make sure you're getting enough protein, and you need to cut back on sodas, on French fries, on breads, on all kinds of sugary and starchy stuff. That's how you're going to lose weight. Now, did he have a Harvard study to back him up on that? Probably not. Did he have years of experience of working with guys and seeing that work? Of course he did. That's why he was the wrestling coach. So when people like Khan, and I've had my own go-arounds with him and witnessed some of yours, when they pull out the whole "I have a degree" thing, I personally don't care. I don't care what your academic theories are. I want to know, what knowledge have you picked up through actual experience, because that's what matters.
You know, a couple of my early clues before I knew that I was going to become this guy in life was when I was actually in academia, when I was in college. And I've told these two stories several times, and I think it bears repeating here. Early on, I can't remember which class it was, but I was a freshman, and I took just voracious notes, Tom. I'm very fast with a pen. I'm the only guy. I don't know if you notice. I still write here. I don't know if you. I still write with fountain pens. I'm the only guy that, you know. I wrote my whole book in fountain pen.
Wow.
You know, I was 1 inch away from a freaking quill writing that book, and you give me a fountain pen and I can fill up notebooks faster than anyone you've ever seen. I came from parents who were school teachers, and that's just the way I did it. And early in the semester, this professor said that it had to be one of the anatomy courses, or one of them early on. And I was a freshman. He said, fat is the body's preferred fuel. And a very young Vinnie, fat body's preferred fuel. Okay, got it. And we go on for a couple of weeks. And one day we're talking about something. He's talking about the physiology of exercise and aerobic activity. And he goes, in order to do aerobic activity, you need to take in a lot of sugar. You need simple carbohydrates. You need complex carbohydrates, because that's the body's preferred fuel. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there getting ready to break out into a cold sweat, and I'm going back and back and back and back and back. And aha, and my hand goes up. And whenever my hand went up, everybody in class did this at Tulane. Because you
Here's
see,
the guy that's going to question the teacher.
Right. Well, you see, everybody else was there because they were just trying to get into medical school.
Right.
I was trying to get a PE degree.
Right.
You know, and I was the only one that really cared about the body. They were just trying to ace a test.
Right.
I was there. I was like Gomer Pyle, right? I was there, questioning Sergeant Carter at every move, and sometimes turning them into idiots, because I was questioning everything. Because when you come from parents like mine, you ask questions. Right. If you're infinitely curious, you're going to ask questions, and everybody else in the class is going to go, oh, they didn't do it that, but you can hear the collective sigh over the hush of the room. And he goes, Mr. Tortorich, and I said, back on September 24th, you said that fat is the body's preferred fuel. As a matter of fact, you said the brain runs on it. He goes, that's right. So what's with that? I said, well, today I just wrote in my notes 5 minutes ago that you're saying that if we're doing aerobic activity or any kind of activity, our bodies need carbohydrates. And he goes, yeah, that's right. I said, both can't be right. If one is the body's preferred fuel, how can the other be the body's preferred fuel? That was my first clue. And he didn't give me a very good answer. He says, well, you need fat when you're sitting around, your basal metabolic rate, and you burn 2,000 calories a day. And think of fat as being like a log in the fireplace, and carbohydrates being more like a piece of paper you throw in the fireplace. It flames really fast, when you're running, and then you need to keep taking them in. And I'm like, okay, because I was still living on the theory, just like you, Tom, of right. Calorie in, calorie out, because that's what right. they were teaching
right.
at Tulane back in 81. Right. So but it was a clue. He said fat. My grandmother from Italy said, you can't leave this table until you have eggs and butter and bacon, because right. you need that to learn. You need right. that for energy. My grandmother was agreeing with him on the 24th of September, and she would not have agreed with him later in the semester.
Right.
That was clue number one. Clue number two came about a year and a half later. I was sitting there with a girl named Linda. I'm not going to give her last name because I don't want people to bother her. And Linda and I had just walked out of a lab where we had one of the track stars from the Tulane track team. It looked like a Gatorade commercial. We had all of the, stuff hooked to him. We were catching his respiration. We were doing a test. We were getting him to lactic threshold. We were pricking his finger and we're figuring out where his blood is. We had to learn all of this stuff just in case one day we would end up in a Gatorade commercial.
Yeah, these things happen.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably had one, and you probably didn't even know how to do the finger prick, and I know how to do it.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're doing this, and then Linda and I are sitting outside on the bench after lab, and we're having lunch. New Orleans, so I was probably having myself a fried shrimp po' boy, something like that. And when we were done, Linda pulled out a bag of M&Ms. Now, in 1982, M&Ms came in a bag about that big. They didn't come in supersize, extra supersize family pack.
Right.
We got just a little post stamp size of M&Ms. She poured a few in her hand. She puts them in her mouth. She hands me the bag. I get a few out. And then I turn the bag over because, again, infinitely curious. And I went, huh. And Linda goes, oh boy. Because whenever I would say, huh, that means I was getting ready to go off.
Yeah.
And she wasn't having it. She goes, okay, what? I probably said ha 4 times before she picked up on the ha. I said, Linda, this bag of M&Ms has 176 calories in it. She goes, so? I said, we just had a guy getting ready to puke on a treadmill, a trained athlete, for 23 minutes. And we didn't get to 176 calories.
Right.
She said, so what? I said, so what? So everything. She goes, you're not making sense. I said, between the two of us, we finished this bag of M&Ms in about 30 seconds. We both had a quick handful and it's gone. We've put those calories in our body. We're supposed to believe calorie in, calorie out works for weight loss. And we couldn't get a trained athlete in 20 minutes who was about to throw up, who we had to help off of the treadmill. We couldn't get that guy to 200 calories.
Right.
So calorie in, calorie out can't possibly work. And she looked at me and she says, well, unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's what we're taught.
That's it, right? I didn't mean to go off into a soliloquy, but that, it's academic versus what my grandmother knew.
Yeah, exactly.
And guess who was right? My grandmother.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the teacher. There are people, well, I would say 2 things. One, I remember reading years ago that there are people, and we're all, it's a continuum. We're not 100% one or 100% other, but we are on a scale somewhere between what they call synthesizers and compartmentalizers. Synthesizers are guys like us, people like us. When we hear something and then we hear something else a year later, our brains say, do these things fit together? Or do I need to rethink this because of this? And so we're constantly sort of shifting and changing our minds or absorbing new information or taking new information and possibly using that to form a different opinion on old information. We're constantly synthesizing information. Some people are compartmentalizers. They learn a fact, it goes here. They learn another fact, which actually disagrees with this fact, and it goes here in their brain, and they never meet. The fact that this disagrees with this, and they believe both of them, never seems to bother them. The other thing, and I'm not saying this is what was happening with your teacher, but it's part of my frustration with the whole postmodernist mentality that they're teaching in universities, is one of the things they teach in, the whole postmodernist mindset is that, number one, there is no such thing as objective reality, which I think is utter nonsense. And second, they actually teach that logical contradictions do not mean that there's anything wrong with your way of thinking. And the reason they teach that is that so much of their philosophy contradicts itself that, of course, they have to say logical contradictions don't matter. But of course they do. So, I mean, there are those people out there who will say something and they'll believe it 100%. They'll say something else that contradicts that and they believe it 100%. And when you point that out, it doesn't bother them, which I find incredibly strange.
Well, they've even coined a term from what I can tell, and this term is very recent. They'll say, well, this is my truth.
Oh my God. Yeah. That one drives me out of my mind.
When I hear, and I've always said, what you must understand is that there's a universal truth.
Right.
You know, if someone says my truth is gravity is not keeping us on Earth, I turn to them and say, you're a fucking idiot.
Right.
Obviously, there's a universal truth of gravity. We know how it works. It's keeping us from flying off of this planet.
Right.
And I don't care what you think your truth is. Your truth is either ignorance or you're an idiot.
Yes.
Or a combination thereof.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You were going to,
exactly.
So how do you feel? I mean, and this is, I hate to throw everything on millennials, but is this a millennial word? This is my truth. I'm speaking my truth. And it's like,
I'm not going to blame the millennials because it wasn't them. They may be the ones who are more caught up in it. But the whole my truth thing, again, that comes out of that whole postmodernist mindset where there is no objective reality and you can believe things that contradict each other and still believe them and still think they're both true. And there's nothing wrong with that. The postmodernist philosophy has been around since really since the 50s. It started taking root somewhat in the 60s. And then when the 60s generation who bought into all this nonsense moved on and became the university teachers, this is what they are teaching our youngsters. I mean, parents are paying good money to have their kids educated in this complete nonsense. So I won't blame the millennials as in they didn't come up with it. They're the first generation that graduated from universities where this was taught to them basically by baby boomers, people our age.
Do you see the pendulum swinging back, or is there a world in a world? Is there a world in Tom Naughton's life where you can sit there and ponder? You know, I've always said, there's always, the pendulum has to start swinging in the opposite direction. Maybe it's because I'm a Libra, that we always think that there's a check and balance that's going to go on. And if you do believe the pendulum is getting ready to swing back, do you think it's going to be an overcorrection in the opposite direction?
Well, I'd say two things. I don't know how you overcorrect in the direction of believing in objective truth. That's like overcorrecting in your belief in gravity. Will there be a switch away from this postmodernist? Yeah. I recently read a book, The Fourth Turning, and it explains how we have these cycles in Anglo-American history where we move toward this loosey-goosey, authoritarian, socialist phases, or it's not always a socialist phase. We go through these periods where Americans come together and pull apart and come together and pull apart. This is we're, I think, all disturbed by how many Americans are basically at each other's throats today, or will break off a friendship because they found out their friend has different political beliefs than they do, whatever. This is actually cyclical. It's happened before. So will that go away? Yes. Here's the bad thing. It's usually gone away after this pulling apart leads to a severe crisis. The severe crisis is often a war, and it often ends with America being, well, it's not just, this is Anglo-American history, it's happened in England as well. It often ends with society not looking really much like it did before. Then that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. So my gut feeling is, and I would love to be wrong, that what we're seeing now is going to keep bubbling. I think the whole COVID thing is making it worse because it's given the authoritarians an excuse to do everything they wanted to do anyway, but wouldn't have dared tried until they were able to scare us out of our senses with this virus. I think I think we are going to reach that crisis point. I'm not sure we're going to be able to back away from it peacefully. I'd love to, but I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen.
Well, you answered my next question. I was going to say, do you think COVID could be the beginning of the end? You know, my favorite thing that happened during COVID, and I shouldn't say it because so many people died with this getting COVID-19. I was in LA a couple of months ago, and I drove across country, and I was picking up a friend on the way, and I was going there just to work on my next movie. It was easier for me to go there because the cameraman, the sound guys, everything is there. And, you know,
Right.
So I drove across country. I wanted to get out. I just wanted to be on the road for a few days. And the aforementioned F-150 started braking along the way. And I made it into Woodland Hills with it. I dropped it off at the Ford dealership there in Woodland Hills. And I told the guy, I said, here's the deal. I'm on the road. 3,000 miles away from home. You have a couple of days to figure out what's wrong with this truck and fix it. And I just need to let you know what the parameters are. If you can't fix it, I'm just going to sell it. You know, I need it fixed. And he says, okie dokie, we'll figure it out for you. No problem, sir. And I said, okay, great. Now, I think you know where this is. Ventura, around, Woodman or somewhere around there. There's a Ford dealership. And there was a rental car about 3 miles up the road on Ventura. And I said to the service guy, I said, hey, can you guys give me a ride right up the road to the rental car place? And he goes, no can do. I said, really? Why not? He simply said, COVID. He didn't have to say anything else. COVID. And I said, you can't give me a ride because of COVID? And he said, no can do. That's policy. And I said, can you loan me a car? He goes, no, we can't. We can't loan cars. I said, well, why? And he says, COVID. I said, oh, interesting. I said, are you guys open for selling cars? And he said, yeah. I said, if I went to the other side of the building, can I test drive a car? He goes, absolutely. And I said, do you see the craziness in what we're doing here? And he goes,
Yeah,
absolutely I do, but that's what we're doing.
right.
So you see, what you don't know, Tom, is that COVID is beaten out by the new car smell. Yeah, I had to look it up. I had to Google it when I got home. The new car smell is the only thing that was known to beat COVID.
Well, no. There was a second. You're not allowed to gather in large groups on the street unless you're protesting certain causes. Now you're immune from spreading COVID. It's a funny little virus. The things that can basically cause it to just go away temporarily.
Yeah, I'm an atheist. I don't spend time in church or celebrating any God or anything else. And I just thought it was odd that people couldn't go to religious services.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, and it came out of Fauci's mouth.
Right.
He said, yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay to protest. And they said, well, why is it? Because it's outside. So can we go to the beach? No. You can't go to the beach.
Yeah.
Well, the beach is outside too, right? So I can see if you said, oh, you can protest because it's outside, and most of these congregations go inside of some kind of chapel. I get that.
Right.
Okay, Fauci, I'll give you a buy round on that. So can we go to the beach? No beach.
Right.
You see, and then they want us to listen to that dogma. They want us to
Yeah.
listen to what they're talking about. And, I kept, it's like, well, are you a Trump fan? It's like, no, this has nothing to do with Trump. I don't know what side Fauci was on. I don't care who's on what side, but you can't say one thing to one group of people and something else to a different group of people and not expect people to be completely confused. What say you, Tom?
Well, what I say is that, and I didn't think I would see this happen in my lifetime. I mean, we've reached the Ministry of Truth from 1984, where they will just make up facts that aren't facts, and then they will make up other things that contradict what they said before, and you're just supposed to be obedient and pretend you didn't notice. And it's amazing how many people are just falling in line with this. And I've been disgusted when I've had Twitter debates on how many people facing exactly the type of thing you just described. Oh, it's not safe to go to the beach, but it's safe to go out and protest. Just accept it. And I'm thinking, I guess I had too optimistic of a view of what the American public's natural personality is, because to me, I'm an American. I'm not supposed to just suck up to authority. I'm not supposed to just go along unquestioning. In America, at least this is what I believe, politicians are not the people's masters. They are supposed to be the people's servants, and we are supposed to question them. That's not only not doesn't make us bad people. I consider it our patriotic duty to question what we are told. And I'm seeing people just falling in line like sheep and proving very much what, I forget who said it, I think it was Mencken, about how, how easy it is to just basically scare people into being obedient. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was awesome. I wish I'd come up with it. And I'm seeing people, they're just told virus, scary, blah, 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 and they're just falling in line. And it reminds me of something I read in a book a few years ago called The Science of Fear, which was a wonderful book. And I think you, especially with your background, will appreciate this. The author explains how, I think his name's Gardner. It's analogous to, yes, you live in a modern society with modern food, but your body was coded back in paleo days. So the foods that you thrive on are actually the foods that were around in paleo days, not the foods that we have now. And he kind of goes on with that analogy and says, back when our brains were formed, if you saw a threat, if you were even told about a threat, it was legitimate, it was local, and therefore it was an actual threat to you. When people lived in small tribes, if your neighbor said, oh my God, I saw a saber-toothed tiger, that was a real threat. You needed to actually pay attention and actually be afraid of that. Unfortunately, because of that circuitry, if we're told about a threat on a news story, on TV, it happened once, it happened 200,000 miles away, our brains are still conditioned to say, this threat is real and I need to be scared, even though you do not. And I think that is a large part of what's driven the whole COVID thing. All the news shows were falling all over each other to show us the death counts. And then they went crazy with the case count, which was nonsense because most of the cases were not actually sick people. So when people are constantly seeing the death counts go up, more people dying of COVID, blah, 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 what most of them didn't ask themselves is, okay, if I weren't seeing this on the news, would I even know anything was happening? And I've asked a whole lot of people that. If COVID had not been the story on the news, if it wasn't people dying of COVID, oh my God, COVID this, oh my God, COVID that, just based on the experiences of your family, friends, and coworkers, would you even have known that this was an unusual year? And most of them said, well, now that you put it that way, no, I wouldn't have known there was anything unusual. I've had friends who got COVID. My brother got COVID. Most of them said, if I hadn't been told it's COVID, I would have thought I had a cold. I would have thought I had the flu. Nobody would have even thought anything unusual was going on this year. But because it's on TV and it triggers this part of our brain that says, if I hear about a threat, it is a threat. It is a threat to me. We've been conditioned to just be terrified. And honestly, the amount of fear that people have bought into, and therefore the amount of authoritarian nonsense that they're willing to put up with because they've been conditioned to be afraid. I'm way more afraid of how compliant people have become than I am of this virus by a long shot.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, if you're sitting there going, well, Vinnie and Tom are crazy, are they virus deniers or whatever? Because you can put denier behind anything. Are
Right.
you a chocolate milk denier? And when you say that, all of a sudden it sounds, oh my God, these people are crazy. We're not saying that. I I just want things to be, either on or off. And that was my confusion the entire time.
Right.
When you say this virus at the beginning, when no one knew what it was, and we go, oh, it can live on an Amazon box for 2 weeks.
Right.
We were leaving boxes outside in the rain and everything else. Oh, we can't touch that box. We can't bring that COVID. They had us that scared.
Right.
But after a couple of weeks, when they said, "Oh, look, it doesn't live on anything for any amount of time, and you're okay bringing it back." So at first it seemed okay, and this was going to pass by and go away. And I even agreed with the 15 days, let's do it. If we could get whatever this is under control, if the
Right.
hospital is going to have a problem, I bought into all of it. But then when you start watching it and they go, okay, we're doing this, but we're not doing that. You can go and protest, but you can't go on a trail or you can't go to the beach. My favorite one, and this is the one I brought up to everyone all the time, is okay, gyms are closed. Yeah, gyms are closed, but the airlines are open.
Right.
You can be on a sealed tube. You could get in a sealed cigar tube with hundreds of other people,
Right.
and that's fine, but we can't go to the gym.
Right.
And the answer I would get is, oh, you don't understand. These airplanes have super scrubbers. They can scrub that air. I was like, that's bullshit, because almost every winter when I've gotten on a plane at some point, I've gotten either the flu or a cold.
Right.
So why couldn't that super scrubber get rid of that influenza or that, rhinovirus or whatever I got on the plane, yet it can somehow magically capture COVID? Right. It can't be both. That's what I'm always talking about, Tom. You can't have this universal truth about something and then say, okay, it's okay for this, but not okay for that. So now we're just saying the same thing over and over. I just wanted to make that point.
Well, and I would agree with you, by the way, because I know anytime you say your fear of COVID is overblown, people want to throw out the word denier. That's because, as Cheryl Atkinson, former CBS reporter, pointed out in her latest book, whenever you want to dismiss someone's arguments without having to actually engage them, you simply call them conspiracy theorist or denier and think you've made a point, which you haven't. And now you move on and say, we don't have to listen because I slapped a label on him. I'm not a COVID denier. I know it exists. I know it's dangerous. I know it's killed a lot of people. What I want people to understand is the risk to you. Most people wildly overestimate the risk to themselves. And I'm not a denier in terms of what it does. I certainly disagree that lockdowns and masks, et cetera, are doing anything about it. And that's not because I'm a denier. It's because I've looked at the damned evidence. And the whole lockdown mentality, I believe that whole process has been hijacked by people because it's serving their ends, not because it's keeping us safe.
Yeah. Tom, we're going to make that the final word. I like to keep people for an hour. I hate to abuse your time. And
You're not abusing my time.
I've kept you way over an hour, and
Yeah.
I always appreciate you coming on. Hang on. I want to say goodbye to you off the air. Folks, if you like what's going on here, you can go to Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieCharteris.com. It puts a little coal on the fire, gets my train down the track. Also, Villa Cappelli, the longest running sponsor of this show. Villa Cappelli, if you go there and get your olive oil, guaranteed not to be any seed oil in there. So you want to do that, villacappelli.com. Go check it out. Promo code Vinnie will save you 10% every single time you go there. Villa Cappelli, promo code Vinnie, Vinnie, no wimpy Y, and you'll save 10%. And I hope you guys enjoyed what Tom and I talked about today, because, look, we started talking about the wisdom of crowds and not the wisdom of the anointed, the what of the anointed?
Vision.
The vision of the anointed. And that just went into a COVID conversation that I normally try to stay away from, but and I'm not going to speak for Tom, but I think Tom may agree with me. Tom, I'll let you speak to this real quickly, but I'm not denying anything. COVID was a horrible disease.
Yeah.
But we've had people lose their livelihoods, their jobs. Kids have been out of school for a year. There's these arbitrary things. And at this point, I'm wondering why it is. Tom?
How about if I wrap it up this way? Is it a bad disease? Yes. The response was worse.
I would agree with that. Folks, on behalf of Tom Naughton, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.